let's talk a little bit about a continuation of the series, right? So in the past few weeks, we dived into the prep work, right? So if you know that you want to start performing well, start studying well, what kind of preparations, what kind of environment that you have to put yourself in, right? So we said that you need a controlled environment. Obviously, the more like-minded people in your community, the more likely it is for you to succeed, and the less likely it is for there to be any hiccups. We also said that it's very important to be patient, right? That you know that it's more of a marathon, not a sprint, and that you have to constantly stick at the job and constantly repeat the process until eventually you'll get good, and it's not an overnight thing. At the same time, we're also saying how it is important to actually enjoy the process, right? A lot of times, like, students like to play sports, or like to play games, or they like to go do exercise, go to the gym, and they like that stuff because it's just interesting to them, right? And I feel like if you really look at it, there actually are very obvious improvements as to why they keep going back to that, right? So if you think about the psychology behind it, if I just liked the sport basketball, I don't actually need to play it. I can just watch other people play it and just be in awe of how good the human potential is in the sport of basketball. But at the same time, I like to play it myself because even though I'm not the best player, right? By far not, but I can do things to make myself improve, and there's progress and you can see improvement. And then also you can test the skills that you've like worked hard on and see if it works. Like when you play a competition, you're playing like a game with other people. Because if you're just training there by yourself at all times, like you're gonna really have to love shooting a basketball by yourself, right? Which I feel like it's not very sustainable. So the only way that people can get back to it is, number one, they can clearly see that improving, like the time that they spent to hone their craft is resulting in them getting better. And at the same time, other people compliment them and other people acknowledge it. I think that's also important, right? So they're like, oh, wow, you're such a really good shooter now. Oh, you're really quick now. I can't even guard you anymore, right? And that is like the confirmation that you get to understand that all that effort and time, not only you yourself can appreciate, but other people that are like-minded, that your friends in your community can also appreciate, right?
Definitely.
So I feel like that's what kind of keeps you motivated. This is why, like, if you kind of like translate that into studying, and I don't think we really talked that much about it last time in terms of depth, but the mindset behind it is maybe be more interested in the subject matter itself. Like, for example, if you're studying math or you're studying English, like, how important is it as a societal skill to know how to do math, to know how to do English? Because a lot of the times, because you can't just be the only one that's interested or appreciated, and sometimes you're not even interested or appreciated, right? So you might need to rely on the society's value of those subjects, of those topics, to be able to encourage and motivate yourself to keep going back at it, right? So for example, like, someone that likes design or someone like that, like art, they can go to the Louvre, or they can go to the Sydney Opera House, right? Or they can go to the Eiffel Tower. So these sorts of things, right? Like, imagine you have that eye and you have that appreciation for art, but for those kind of structures to be able to come to reality, right? You would need to know mathematics and physics, you know what I mean? To be able to understand, and chemistry to extent, in terms of the materials that you need to use, for those things to be even able to come to life. And that's why, like, the human species is so impressive, because we have the brain capacity to be able to compute all that information to a highly accurate state, right? In which then we can actually make these things that seems impossible possible. But imagine you don't have the fundamental skills, the mathematics, physics, and chemistry skills to be able to understand how to make your art form come to life, as an example. So, like, think about how these sorts of subject matters can actually play a part, you know, in society, and also in things that you may already be curious or interested in doing, right? Like, you want to be an architect, but you're not going to be a good architect if you don't know math well, if you don't know physics well, if you don't know art well, to an extent, isn't it? Right? Because you're just going to create things that they're like, oh, this is impossible. How are you going to even build this?
I guess that's where the engineer comes in.
But that's the point though, right? Like, you might not even design it that way because you know that maybe physically it's impossible, right? So, like, try to link these subjects into things that you're curious about and you're interested about, right? And therefore, that, like, is an extra incentive for you to spend a little bit more time in like honing those crafts and honing those things. And I think that's one of the main issues when it comes to like school. A lot of people really struggle in school because the people that are teaching them aren't the people that are invested in those subject matters to begin with. They're only teachers because that's the only job they could get or something. I remember there was a stat back in the day where like to become a teacher, the ATAR requirements was like as low as 65 or something. So imagine like you're not actually having the engineers and the architects and the mathematicians and the actual poets and writers that are there to teach the next generation how to understand English or how to understand maths, how to understand science, right? It's people that already are questionable at those topics because when they were in school, they didn't really do too well. And those are the people that are trying to inspire the next generation? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's not happening. Right? So I understand then why the school system is how it is. But there's a lot of obviously political agendas and all that we're not going to get into. But I feel like at least personally, each one of us individuals, especially the people that are listening to our podcast, right? They need to realize that they can't get that inspiration from the schools a lot of the times. And if they do have inspiring teachers, count themselves lucky because there's not a lot of those around. And therefore, they need to think about and be more observant and understand the world a little bit better, see what their interests are, and see how the subject matters that they're studying will actually help them eventually to a point. Right? If you want to be an engineer and you want to build these monuments, in year 7 when you're learning algebra skills, you're not thinking about that. You're thinking about how boring and repetitive this is, right? But it's because of how quickly and instantaneously you can react, right, to those algebra skills, using those algebra skills that will allow you to speed up the process for you to be able to appreciate that. Imagine not knowing algebra. How would you be able to learn calculus? You can't. Right? How would you be able to do series and sequences in which later then becomes finance, in which I feel like is a very big topic that every single person living in this world needs to know, right? Why do people go broke? Why do people not have enough money? It's because a lot of times they don't know how to do their calculations, right? And I see on the internet a lot of the times people are like, oh, they should have taught us how to do business in school, or they should taught us how to, do taxes and how to save money. That's what they should teach us in school and not algebra and geometry. Well, to be fair, you won't be able to understand annuities if you didn't already have that foundation of algebra, right? Because like when they start the most basic mathematics, you can't follow. And therefore, how are you going to understand what's going on? So unfortunately, I feel like students just need to understand, especially the younger they are, the parents and the teachers need to instill in them like, hey, listen, I know it's hard right now. It's boring right now that you have to like do all this surds and indices, right? But eventually you're going to get to a point where you can actually, because your reaction to those algebra scenarios is very quick, that then you can put the focus on the actual applications, which is how can I use math to optimize, right? To make a lot of money or build the best quality structures with using the least amount of costs and least amount of manpower, least amount of hours, right? That's what optimization is about. Or things like calculus to understand and derive equations, or even create equations, to understand how the world's changing, how diseases spread, right? How cancers work and how the share stock markets work. Do you know what I mean? And create algorithms to be able to combat that. Like these sorts of things, like the fundamentals is algebra, if you think about it. But like as a kid, you don't know that. So I feel like it's a lot of the teachers and the parents, they need to instill in them like, hey, listen, like I know this is boring right now, but in 2 years' time, when you get to year 10, all this skill is going to pay off. Right? Instead, when you actually get to year 10, 11, 12, and you actually are diving into subject matters that you're interested in, then you realize that you can't actually execute because back in year 8 or year 9, you didn't remember exact values in trig or something. And then it's hindering your reaction time, and you're taking like 5-10 times longer than a person that actually did grind it out. And then like sometimes like that applies to everything. Like all those kids that are interested in going to the gym, for example, what they're striving for, what they're searching for is not only health, but also admiration from people around them. They're like, oh, you look strong, you look fit, you look aesthetically good, right? And therefore, they can appreciate and accept the grind during that time. Like lifting weights is not easy. It's not fun, right? It's very repetitive, just like doing algebra is.
Yeah.
So how is it then, like those same people, they're willing to go to the gym and, you know what I mean, do all this repeating exercise, and in that scenario, they understand the patience and the time and the grind and the hard work because they already know the end goal.
Yeah.
The end goal is aesthetic. The end goal is be able to compete, whether it's like jumping higher, running faster in sports, or you know what I mean, going to bodybuilding competition where more defined muscles or whatever, right? Or doing strongmen where you can, you know what I mean, like lift the most trickiest, heaviest objects or whatever, right? And therefore, the repetition becomes an afterthought.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
but
true.
the same people, they can't find that same kind of discipline when it comes to studying is because they don't also have that same end goal in mind. So therefore, I feel like people that are interested in these art forms, in the science and the arts, right? They really need to understand like what their potential is, right? And once they get motivated by, oh, I want to become that person that cures cancer or sends a rocket to Mars or whatnot, that they can then appreciate, okay, I really need to hone in on my algebra skills right now. Yeah.
And for those who don't know what they want to do.
Yeah. That having the skills is making them ready
Yeah.
so that when they do know, they can pick it up immediately.
Exactly.
And they don't have to start learning all that grind again from the beginning, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like that's something that we're going to dive deeper into today as well. It's easy to say, make studying a hobby, but actually the process is not that fun a lot of the times. It's the growth, it's the improvement that's the fun. It's the people that you start beating, or you're starting, overtaking. That is what makes that process fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody wants to go to the gym and run on a treadmill for 30 minutes. That's not really fun. That process is not fun, but why they keep going back is they know what that end result is going to be. It's going to be, your friends are weak, I'm strong. So therefore they're going to like really look up to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I feel like everyone has those motivations and therefore it's fun. Like when you see improvement, that's what gets you addicted. That's what gets you coming back for more.
Yeah.
Even though it's hard and it's boring in that moment, right? So it's very important for the students to understand that you need to have a very clear end goal in order for you to be able to stick in there. You know what I mean? Like hold strong and be disciplined and go back to do those tedious exercises and that constant, never-ending repetition.
Yeah.
I think is what a lot of kids are missing. So we're probably going to continue our conversation from there.